welcome back to a fabulous video. We are going to be looking at a few things that the federal government cannot do on this section. And we've already discussed that, there are certain things that the state can't do, for example, creating their own currency or, making war or establishing treaties. But there are also a few things that the federal government cannot do according to the Constitution. So first, the federal government cannot favor one state over another when it comes to regulating trade. So if you are, let's say you live in Maryland and you live on the coast and you've got this booming fishing industry, the government can't unnecessarily or unfairly hinder you or advance your business while somehow affecting somebody who lives in Massachusetts, okay? Everybody has to be given equal access when it comes to regulating trade. All right, the fun part down here, they can't pass ex post facto laws or bills of attainder, okay? So here's an example. An ex post facto law is a law that makes an act a crime after it was committed. So just jot that down, a law that makes an act a crime after it was committed. So here's an example, a crazy one. Imagine that I am on my birthday, which is September 10th, just so you know. And I decide that on my lunch break, I want to walk up and down the streets of Park Hills and squawk like a chicken. So I am squawking like a chicken as I'm walking up and down the streets of Park Hills. And all of a sudden, the city of Park Hills rolls up beside me and says, "Mrs. Petty, we're going to take you in." And I'm like, "Why?" They said, "You can't do that. Can't squawk like a chicken." And I'm like, "Oh, I know the law, friend." And they just keep on going. So the next day, the city of Park Hills passes an ordinance that says any employee of Central R3 School District cannot squawk like a chicken up and down Main Street. Could they punish me for that act? No, because I did it before it was a crime. So they couldn't punish me for it at that time. If I decided to test my luck and do the same thing after they passed that law, then yeah, I would be held responsible for it, okay? So an ex post facto law is a law that makes an act a crime after it was committed. Going along with that are bills of attainder. So a bill of attainder is one of those things that it was used primarily during the time, well, not primarily, but most popularly during the time of Henry VIII, the English king with all the wives. And a bill of attainder would basically find someone guilty of something and punish them without giving them a trial or the chance to defend themselves or even be told what they're accused of. Okay, so that would be like me saying to you, all of you are guilty of stealing my coffee and you are banished to the ends of the earth. And you wouldn't have the chance to say, "No, Mrs. Petty, you just drank all of your coffee. We didn't take it." You would just be punished without a crime or without a trial. Okay. And scooting over to a few different types of federalism and how federalism has changed over the years. So most people would probably agree that the size and strength of the federal government has increased since the establishment of the United States. So with Mcculloch versus Maryland, this is one of those landmark cases that we talked about in class. In Mcculloch v. Maryland, you had the state that was attempting to tax a federal institution. The federal government said, "No, you can't do that to us because we're the federal government." And that's pretty much how the Supreme Court, how they decided, okay? In Gibbons versus Ogden, also one that you've learned about in class, the state government gave this one guy a charter to run a monopoly between two states. The federal government gave another guy the same charter. So which was supreme? The federal government. So we kind of see, especially during the early 1800s, that the evolution of federalism is kind of going in favor of the federal government. We do have a few examples of states' rights, though, especially during the Civil War. That's why the states seceded. They believed they had the right to do so as sovereign entities or as sovereign political communities. So they were able to successfully, well, I won't say successfully because they lost, but they were able to secede from the Union in an attempt to make their own confederation. So that brings me to this concept of dual federalism versus cooperative federalism. So in a system of dual federalism, it's kind of like a layered cake, right? So one layer and the icing and the other layer and the icing. They don't mix together, right? They're separate. So in dual federalism, the states and the federal government are working independently, okay? There's no mix between the two of them. In cooperative federalism, the states and the federal government are working together, whether that's through legislation or through funding. So that's kind of like a marble cake analogy, okay? So I want you to think about what type of federalism you think the United States uses today. If you have any questions,